Have you done the soundtrack for any films so far?
Well, yes, I've done soundtracks for a few films so far. The very first one being Three Animals, One Stuffed. And basically I was playing a concert in Bloomington, and the filmmakers actually heard me playing and approached me after the concert and said, listen, we're making a film, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in doing the soundtrack for it, because they heard my music that I was performing. And I jumped at the chance. Certainly I did. And so I did the music for the film Three Animals, One Stuffed. That eventually came out on DVD. I think after a couple. That really got me interested in doing soundtracks and films and things. And you have to remember, I was a big fan of Tangerine Dream, the German synth band that did soundtracks for a lot of films, Risky Business, The Thief, The Miracle Mile, and so on. And I was a big fan of their music, and certainly John Carpenter as well, with Halloween and The Fog and things, and where he, not only directed the film and had a vision for the film, but also performed the music. And that's certainly something that I really liked, and I liked the music as well. And that certainly influenced my music as well. So that certainly spawned my interest in doing film soundtracks. I also did the music for MTV's The Real World series, and a slew of independent films. There's a lot of filmmakers out there who require music, and so I submitted music to a lot of these smaller independent films. In fact, on my website I have a filmography, kind of like a discography, and basically it just lists the films and music I've done for those films. One thing I realized is that it takes a very, very long time from the time you submit music to potentially be used in a film or do the soundtrack for the film. It can be months to literally years before you get an actual final product. There's just a lot of stages to it, from everything from editing and post-production. Yes, I've worked on definitely quite a few films so far. They've all been smaller films, though, and I've tried to get into larger and larger films. Really, my goal is to do the soundtrack for a film that I can go rent, at a video store. That's really my goal there, which so far I have not attained. I'm working on it, though. Working on it, certainly.
Soundtrack-wise, how do you compose for a film?
Usually, the standard way of doing a soundtrack is, you have a composer, he'll watch, the film or the video segment, and then compose for it, writing it down on paper or that kind of thing. I'm really because all my music is improvised on the spot. In a way, it's very difficult for me, because as a result, I don't really compose for film like others do. Instead, when I see a video segment, I try to think of what mood or atmosphere it creates and try to come close to that, which is how I would compose music for a film. doing it, improvised on the spot while watching the film. I'm not sure that anyone really does it that way, but that would be my approach, and has been my approach. I simply, I don't work out parts ahead of time. The other thing is, my film music, very specifically, is to create moods and atmosphere and tension and those kinds of things. It definitely is not the kind of film score where, if someone's creeping along in a kitchen, let's say, walking through a kitchen, and they knock over a chair, that suddenly the music goes ba-da, or something like that, to the action. That's not the kind of soundtrack music that I do at all. It's all about moods and atmosphere and creating tension. Which, I've always enjoyed in films much more than the kind of, movie music to specific actions, which really, many times ends up being a little hokey, in my opinion, anyway. But this is one thing that I discovered, too, is that I certainly wasn't right for certain films that were looking for that kind of music. That was going right with the action, specifically. In other words, he turns a key and you hear the music going, or something like that. It's just, I don't know, to me it always came off real hokey, and that's not the kind of film that I really, or film music that I enjoyed anyway. I much preferred music that really, sets the mood, sets the atmosphere, and the tension in the film, or a solemn moment, perhaps, depending on the thing. The other thing is, in working on films, many times, the film director, the film creator, has a very specific idea of where he wants music and what kind of music he wants. And some of the best projects that I've done so far as film is really to provide a CD of music that I've created for a specific scene, and let the director choose, which track he wants to put with that particular scene, and for what length and where he wants the music. And many times that has been the case, and then it becomes more of, rather than soundtrack composing necessarily, it's more of a music licensing. You're licensing the music for the film, but they can use it in any way they want, where they want in the film. And that I really enjoy doing. As long as they tell me, well, we need something, maybe upbeat, or, we need a really dark musical theme or atmosphere for this one, or really moody, or that kind of thing. So I create a CD of material and send it to them, and they place it where they want. And there I've done, at least 10, if not 11 independent films that way. Not of my films, but of other filmmakers, by sending music to them and then having them license it. One that I'm being considered for is a film called Mammoth for the Sci-Fi Channel. That would be really great if that end comes through. I just licensed 2 songs for Can Do Films again, and they were just recently. So we'll see where that works. It's the same with MTV's the Real World series, was basically send them music that they can use, as a soundtrack to the show. But I don't know where specifically it will be at all. Certainly if if I was doing a film anyway, an independent film, or creating a film, I certainly would not want to turn my film project over to a music composer, you know, to do that, because you would have a certain vision, you know, for each scene, and what kind of music it would be, how loud it would be, and those kinds of things. And so if you can rather license music and then place it where you want to as a filmmaker, I think that'd be the way to go. Then again, you know, I've only done a few film projects so far, but it's something I definitely am interested in.
In what ways are independent films similar to playing guitar and making CDs?
Gosh, that's a really good question, and for some reason I feel that they're very much linked together and are very, very similar. You know, when you play guitar or make a film, it's a creative process where you're creating something, you know, and I've discovered that, at least for me, you know, doing a documentary or a film is creating, you know, a video. Just like when you're playing guitar and, you know, you're creating a composition. And so in those ways it's very similar. The other thing is, when you create a CD, you know, it's a real project that you have to see from beginning to end. You know, everything from recording to mixing to mastering the tracks, choosing the cover, on and on and on. Well, films are very much the same kind of thing, very similar. You know, you have a project that you want to do from beginning to end, an independent film or a documentary. And from there, you know, then you'll either have a script or you'll have some kind of you know, choosing music for a scene, choosing actors, and so on and so on. So they are very similar.
Would you consider working on a major motion picture? Is that your goal?
Well, certainly working on a major motion picture, you know, would be fantastic. It'd be a great experience, and certainly something I'd be interested in doing, of course. However, it's not really my goal, because I realize that, you know, on a big budget motion picture, there's definitely a lot that's involved as far as doing the film score for it, and it certainly I'd be interested in doing it, and I think I could do it and do a good job of it. But getting the opportunity is very, very difficult, you know, to get the opportunity to do that. Though it's certainly something I'd be interested in. But as I said, for right now anyway, my goal is to do the soundtrack or the music for a film that I can go rent. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a huge blockbuster major motion picture, you know. But even, you know, a decent independent film. That's one thing that I would hope that the music that I do for film would be at least the quality, you know, matching the film that I'd be working on. Some of the independent films that they wanted me to do music for were so bad. So bad in the sense that they were, you know, looked like maybe a high school project or some kid playing with a camera, you know, and that's not really an independent film to me. And so I quickly learned that there's a lot of those out there. And really, I would prefer to use the music that I create, you know, for serious projects. serious independent films. And just those major motion pictures, are far and few between and very difficult to get into, to get the opportunity to do it. A lot of directors work with composers that they worked with on other films for years and years. There's agents involved and that kind of thing. So it's very difficult. We'll see. If ever the opportunity comes up, I'm perfectly happy, rather than waiting and waiting and waiting for something that may never happen as far as a major motion picture. Doing a lot of very good quality independent films, the music for independent films, is those that they are taking seriously, and that will eventually be completed too.